Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And this is one of the most exciting parts about starting a business and about your entrepreneurial journey. And when you think about being an entrepreneur and exploring launching your business, I think crafting your pitch is one of the most important things that you're going to do, and nailing it and getting it right is crucial to the success of your business. So today we're going to go over pitch psychology because in a nutshell, pitching is a human-centric task. So you need to be able to touch people's emotions and stir their emotions when you're pitching. We're going to talk about pitching templates. What does it look like? What you need to put in your slides. We're going to talk about golden guidelines and what not to do in pitching. And then you will do your own pitches at your own time. All right. So we like to liken the process of pitching to doing Jedi mind tricks. And the reason we do that is because pitching is essentially a human-centric task. You need to understand how to trigger the right response in people to get them to do what you're asking for, essentially to deliver on your ask. Every time that you're pitching, you're trying to make something happen. So one of the most crucial things that you're trying to achieve when you pitch your business is to inspire some sort of an action. So if you're pitching your business to an investor, you're trying to get an investment. If you're trying to pitch it to a potential client, you're trying to get them to buy into your product. If you're pitching it to a partner, you want them to get on board and maybe deliver part of your solution or become a part of your ecosystem. Whatever it is, whenever you're pitching, you're trying to make something happen. And that's one of the most crucial things you're going to learn about pitching is how to inspire action. The second most important thing is for your pitch to be memorable. People need to remember your pitch. A lot of times you will not be pitching alone. Whether you're pitching as part of a university project or a university entrepreneurial journey, or whether you're pitching to an accelerator, or whether you're pitching to an investor, you are not pitching alone. There's a lot of startups that are pitching with you, and you need to stand out. There needs to be a reason why people will remember your pitch over the other pitches that they listen to. So that's very important. And then another thing we cannot emphasize enough is the importance of clarity, being clear. I'm going to talk about all of these in detail. So when we talk about inspiring action, it's the process of trying to get to a greater goal. And there's one golden rule to trying to inspire action, which is focusing on your why, something that, there we go, which is something that I'll talk about here. So when you're trying to get people to do something, the most important thing that you need to focus on is your why. Why are you doing this? People most of the time don't care about your product. They don't care about your technology. Sounds very harsh, but when you're selling to clients, the most important thing to them is tell them what's the vision of the world with your product in it, with your solution, how you're going to alleviate their pain, how they're going to solve their problems with your product. That's what they care about. What coding language you use to write your application, or what sensors you used to collect the information, that is hardly what they care about, and you might actually lose their interest if you focus on that. So the most important thing is your why. We know what you're doing, we know how you've achieved it, but you need to get to the core of what are you trying to achieve? How are you making people's lives better? When we talk about being memorable is really important because you're technically, like I said, pitching with other people, you're battling for a space in the minds of the people that are listening to you. So you need to capture their attention. You need to come in with a big bang. There needs to be a very interesting story that you start your pitch with. I'm going to talk about some examples of these stories in a little bit. Clarity is also very, very important. And clarity is something that we cannot emphasize enough, and it's something that you shouldn't underestimate, because it is something that we see some very seasoned entrepreneurs who make hundreds of thousands and millions in revenue not be able to convey well to investors. This is something that a lot of people fall into the trap of doing, not communicating their message clearly, because they know their message so well. So you know what you're doing, you know what your company does, you understand what you're delivering. So when you're hearing yourself, you don't realize that a person that doesn't know what you're doing, that is not familiar with your product, is not understanding the basics of your offering to the market. This is a pitfall that we see all the time. So always make sure that you're running your pitch by somebody that's not familiar with your company. One thing that we fall into as investors is in the beginning, when we're trying to help our startups craft their pitch, we tell them to be clear, that your message is not clear. I just heard you talk for 5 minutes. I still have no idea what you're doing. After you understand their solution, they've explained it to you, and you've had the one-on-ones, and you're convinced, and you invest, you realize that the next time you listen to them, they may not be clear, but you may not pick up on it because you know what they do. So you don't realize that maybe there are aspects of the messaging that they're still missing in that short 5-minute pitch. So it's very important to run your pitch always by somebody who's not familiar with your product and see if they've understood what you're doing. The last thing you want is to speak and pitch for 5 minutes and people are left there thinking, hold on, what do they do again? That means your message is not clear. So how do you formulate your why? How do you talk about why you're solving this problem? I think there are a couple of things that we need to tackle when we're talking about our why, and these include the practical and the emotional parts of the why. When it comes to, I would say, the emotional parts, the parts where you're trying to get people to feel a certain way, is to talk about your purpose, your belief. Why do you believe that this solution is really important? What is the mission of your company? When it comes to the practical aspect, it's what's the problem you're trying to solve? What is the pain that you're trying to address? And again, what is the vision of the world without this pain? One of the most important things to also being memorable is to tailor your message to your audience. It's very important that you understand who you're speaking to and that you review your messaging and your positioning to make sure that it's relevant to what they're doing. A couple of incidents that we've had is, let's say you're going to pitch to a partner and you've prepared your pitch deck, you know exactly what you're putting in your pitch deck for investors, not for partners. And you're using the same pitch deck because you hadn't thought of tailoring your pitch to different audiences. And you take it to this partner and you pitch to them, and they're sitting there thinking, I'm not an investor. I don't really care how much money you're making. I don't really care what you're going to use it for. I'm not sure why you're telling me about what the value of your company is and the equity that people get or the investors get from investing X amount into your company. And they're sitting there thinking, this person really doesn't know what they're doing. What makes them think I'm an investor? What makes them think this information is interesting to me? And you've lost them. Even if they would be interested in partnering with you, you've gotten off with them on the wrong foot and they're not interested in partnering with you anymore. And this is something that we've seen in real life applications. Always make sure you're tailoring your message to your audience. What do they care about? Think about the most interesting thing about your product for this particular person. Most of the time, the most interesting thing about your product, again, is not your technology, unless you're coming up with some really deep tech. And by deep tech, I mean charging mobile phones using drone technology. That's really deep tech. Some people would really want to know how that works. For example, doing blood work without drawing your blood, maybe doing blood work or testing you for some medical conditions using radio frequencies instead of doing blood tests. That's revolutionary. That is something that people would want to know about. Yeah, I actually want to know how you do that. That sounds like magic. Tell me how you do it. That's when your deep tech is interesting. But don't tell people what language you're using to code your application. Don't tell them what sensors you're using to pick up certain data. Don't tell them which cloud provider you're using. People don't care. They care about how this is serving them. If you're talking to customers, they care about their problem, not about your product. If you're talking to partners or potential investors, they care about how much money you're making. They care about how awesome your team is. They care about your vision. And yes, if you're presenting something that's really interesting in terms of cutting edge, revolutionary technology, yes, they're interested. Present that. The first 5 minutes of your pitch will determine whether people will listen to you. I'm sure all of you have experienced this, but have you ever experienced an incident where somebody is talking about something that you don't understand? They're explaining something that you don't understand. And then you catch yourself just drifting off and not listening to them. This is something that's very common. If I'm not sure what you're talking about, then my brain decides that I'm expending too much brain energy on listening to something that I cannot make sense of, that I cannot decipher. So I stop listening. Very, very important. First 30 seconds, make sure that people understand what you're saying so that they can stay engaged. Explaining complex things in a very simple way is something that people underestimate a lot. It's something that people sometimes think means that you don't know what you're saying or you don't understand what you're doing. It's the total opposite. If I'm able to explain something very complicated in a very simple way, that's very impressive. It shows that I know what I'm talking about, and it shows that I can communicate my vision and my purpose to anybody. One of the reasons that you also need to be very clear is because the last thing you want is, if there's a question and answer segment, is for you to repeat everything that you've said in your pitch because you weren't clear. Instead of using the time to answer crucial questions that might actually be able to help you close whatever it is that you're trying to close, you're hung up on trying to re-explain everything that you explained because it wasn't clear enough for people to understand. So I'm hoping that this has made it very, very, very clear to you how important it is to be clear, be memorable, and to inspire action. This is a time-consuming process. You're not going to sit down, write your pitch, and get it right the first time. Invest in the process. Invest in developing your messaging and reiterating your messaging and editing your messaging, in testing your messaging with different parties. See what sticks. Take the time. So what does a pitch look like? What is a typical pitch template? It doesn't exist. What does that mean? It means that there's no silver bullet template that you can use to present to people. Depending on your business, there might be different aspects that you need to present that other businesses may not need to present. But we will show you a template. We'll show you a set of slides that you can follow to present to different audiences. But always keep in mind that this may change depending on your needs and your startup. The pitch deck is actually a part of a series of documents that you develop for your clients and for your investors. It's actually one of the most advanced. So once you have your pitch deck, you know what your one-liner is, so your slogan. You know what your elevator pitch is. Your elevator pitch means if you're stuck in an elevator for 30 seconds with somebody who could potentially be an investor, a client, do you know what you're going to say for 30 seconds? And then there's the 3-minute verbal pitch, which goes hand in hand with your pitch deck, your presentation. You could also develop an email template where you develop a short email that you write to go along with your pitch. And then when we come to explain more details, we talk about your product features for people that are interested in that. So once you have your presentation pitch deck, you've actually laid the groundwork for almost everything else. These are the different slides that you need to include in your pitch deck. I'll talk about each one of them in detail. So the first is the title. This is where you summarize what you do. Don't give out a lot of details at this stage. Keep it simple, keep it direct, entice people to know more. This is also where you tell your story, and a story is very, very important for your pitch. This is, again, something that a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs don't understand to do well, and it is something that takes a lot of practice. Make sure that you have a story. What does that mean? I'll give you an example that I absolutely love from one of our startups. They are a startup that work in the bee conservation space and in honey productivity improvement. And the way that this guy starts his pitch is he says, if the honeybee disappears from the face of the earth, man will have 4 years to live. No bees, no pollination, no plants, no animal, no man. And you got people's attention. You've captured people's attention. Another startup, they work in the wellness space. They provide a solution for corporates to help their employees stay active by tracking their movements on a smartwatch. They start their pitch by talking about a person named Ahmed. Ahmed makes a lot of money. He's doing very well. He's very successful. But Ahmed's also slowly killing himself, because he works all the time and he's stressed out and he doesn't have time to work out, or he doesn't make time to work out. So using their solution, he can actually work out all the time. He can work out taking calls, he can work out at work, he's competing with his colleagues to log in the largest number of steps. Always tell a story. Humanize your solution, if you will. Make people relate to what you're trying to say. Another amazing pitch that we've heard from our founders, a founder or a set of founders that are developing a predictive maintenance solution for manufacturing. It's a device that goes on moving machinery, and it would tell you when this machinery needs maintenance. So the way that they start their pitch, they say, we all know that devices break, and when they break, they make a very loud noise. But before that, they make a much lower noise for a much longer period of time, and that's where we come in. We pick up on that noise so that we're able to tell you that it needs maintaining and it may break down soon. So always tell a story. That's what entices people. They get it. They get what you're about. Even if you're not in the manufacturing space, you understand that when machines break, they make a very loud noise. You may not know that they make a lower noise, but now they're telling you, so you get it. You're putting everything in layman terms, in terms that people can understand, and now they want to hear your story. So once you've presented your story, tell about the problem. What is the problem you're trying to address? Give figures here. What is the pain? When does the pain happen? Where does it happen? How often does it happen? How big or severe is this pain? The larger the pain, the better it is. It means your market is very large. Who are the people that experience this pain? Who are the users and potential customers of this particular problem? Be very specific. For example, if you're selling business to business, are you selling to factories? Are you selling to consultancies? Can everybody purchase your business? Can everybody purchase your product, right? And then present your solution. Now people understood what the issue is. How are you solving it? What are the benefits that you're providing? What are the jobs that your solution does? What are the features it provides? What are the advantages and value add that it presents? Is your solution sustainable? And is it scalable? Is it something that a lot of people suffer from? Is it something that could easily be scaled to be a regional solution, a global solution? What is the long-term impact of having your product in the market? Technology. What technical aspects of your solution are important, are things that people would want to see? Most of the time, this would look like, what is your device? Do you have a device? Show it. Show it here. This is what my device looks like. Do you have an app? Then show us app screens. Show us what people need to look at. This is my dashboard. This is the information that you see on my dashboard. If you don't have a product developed yet, show a mock-up. Show a sketch of what your technology looks like. Financials, this is very important. Show them how much revenue you're expecting to make over the next, let's say, 18 months to 3 years. What percentage of that is expenses so that they understand what your profit is. Don't go into spreadsheets, don't put tables, maybe just a bar chart with your revenue and then your margin on that to show the split of expenses and profit. But be prepared to discuss assumptions. Investors will ask. They will want to find out what assumptions you've made to arrive at your sales numbers and to arrive at the amount that you're asking them to invest. When you ask investors to invest, you always need to be authentic to the amount that you need to raise for your company to have a specific runway. A runway is the amount of time that your company can run with the amount of cash that you have. How will you make money? This is also very important. What's your business model? Do you have a SaaS model? Is it a subscription? Do people pay monthly? Do they pay annually? If you have a device, are you going to have them invest in upfront payment for the device? Or are you just going to charge them every month so that they don't feel like they have to invest a large capital expenditure on your product? But eventually, in the long run, if you're charging a subscription, you're making more money than maybe charging them a one-off for the product, especially if it comes with software. Are you going through distributors? Are you giving them a commission? Are you charging people on a project basis? This is especially true if you have some large clients where you need to tailor your solution a little bit to them, especially when it comes to selling business to business. You may have to charge on a project basis. Your market, this is very important for investors to understand. What is your market size? Total addressable market, total serviceable market, and total target market. We addressed these in the ideation, but I'll go over them again. What is your market size in terms of the total market, total global market that you are addressing with your product? For example, the e-commerce market globally is worth 100 billion, for example. Then what's your total serviceable market? Let's say you have an e-commerce application that's targeting people on the GCC. Your total serviceable market is people who download applications in the GCC and have the financial capability to purchase the products in the price range that you're addressing. So now we're going smaller. This is a much smaller market. And then your target market is what percentage of all of these people that you know can buy your product will. And usually that's a much smaller amount, maybe 1, maybe 2% of your total serviceable market. And if your total serviceable market is in billions, 1 to 2% is a lot of money. Customers. What is your go-to-market strategy? We're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Research your industry trends. What are people doing in this industry? Where is the growth? Are there any industry reports? Are there any statistics that show how large your market is? Do you know how much it's growing on average? All of that you need to include. Your go-to-market strategy means how are you going to make that first 100, that first 1,000 customers, and then scale from there. What are the sales tactics you're going to implement? How are you going to handle your public relations? Are you going to look at any growth hacking techniques? How are you going to go through marketing? For example, if you're going B2B, business to business, are you going through distributors? Are you maybe going through LinkedIn? What tactics are you using to sell? Make sure that your go-to-market strategy aligns with your target customer. If your customer is a business, then your go-to-market strategy needs to address that. Social media might not be your most powerful asset when you're addressing businesses. So just make sure that you understand how you're going to go to market. Do you understand if, for example, your product is regional or global and it's a physical product? How are you going to maintain it? How are people going to get an assurance that you will be there if their product breaks down? One go-to-market strategy we've seen in the hardware space is if it doesn't work, ship it to me, I'll ship you a new one. That works. If you're a software application, do you have people who reply on, let's say, chat support? Do you have a bot that you're using to respond to your customers? Do you have a team that can reply to emails about concerns or glitches or things that go wrong, or things that maybe people who use your applications can't do and you can only do from the back end? So think about that. How are you going to make sure that you're at the right place at the right time to sell to people when they need you? That's what your go-to-market strategy is. Traction. The single most important thing about your pitch is your traction. The traction means any customer transaction that you've made. Are you generating revenue? That exponentially increases your value to investors. Even if you've sold 10 of your product, that means you know how to sell. That means something to investors. It means your startup is going places. Do you have a pilot project? Pilot projects are also equally important because they tell your investor and your potential customers that somebody's tried this and it works. Having testimonials, having feedback, that's very powerful stuff. Competition. Never say you don't have competition. You always have competition. Always, always, always. You're competing against other priorities. You're competing against other needs and wants of your customer. Always provide a matrix. Your matrix needs to show how much or how many features you're providing or what value add you're providing versus your customers. You always need to take all of them, meaning you always need to provide everything that's a benchmark to entering the market. If your competition provides something that the client thinks is important and you're not providing it, you're already not competing. Let's start there. You need to provide whatever your competitors are providing that's important to your customer. Obviously, maybe your competitor is providing something that may be irrelevant or is not being used. In that case, it doesn't have to be included. And then how are you going to go over that? How are you going to present something that's better? How are you going to do it better? You need to tick all the boxes and your competitors can't, and you can't engineer this matrix to do that. It has to be honest. You actually have to build a product that's better, at least in one way. Your team. Why is your team best suited to deliver this product? As investors, one thing that we always tell our startups is we invest in founders, not in startups or not in ideas. One narrative that I hear a lot is, you know, I had the idea for baqala, or I had the idea for talabat. A lot of people say that and they brag. And my answer usually to that is yes, but they're there and your app is not. And that's not meant to discourage you in any way. It's just meant to say your ideas actually only have value if you execute them. And executing them shows the investor that you're the type of person that follows through. You know what is one of the most attractive things to investors? Failure. It may sound really counterintuitive, but failure is such an amazing asset to have for your team and for your startup. It tells the investors that you have resilience, that you're still there, that you know how to pivot, that you know how to make decisions, that you know how to change things so that you can succeed. And it tells the investor that you have taken the feedback and improved the product and now probably have something that will never fail because you failed in the past. One example from our portfolio is a startup that works in the parking space. Whenever they present their product to an investor, they always say, this is the 4th version of our product. The first 3 versions didn't work. For example, they had a parking lock. So when cars used to crash into it, it would break. So they made a new one. They made sure that the physics made sense, that it could tilt at a specific angle and not break, that it was sturdy enough to withstand crashes. These guys are amazing. They're resilient because they've iterated their product many times based on feedback. It may not have worked to begin with, but now it does. And this is why there's a strong belief in their product. Do you have a strong educational background? Maybe you've worked for some big companies. Maybe your team has qualifications or years of experience that allow them to understand your product. Maybe you've done an internship at a company that does this very well, or that you've seen the problem in and they've vowed to purchase your solution. Tell us why you have a strong founding team. Tell us why you're the ideal team to develop this product and to deliver this product. It doesn't matter what people say is unique about their product. It matters on how they deliver that uniqueness. One thing that I think is a big cultural change that we're seeing is a lot of people are like, I have a business idea, but I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm going to tell you today. If you have a business idea, go out and shout it to the world, because it won't make an ounce of difference to whether you succeed or fail. The only thing that is relevant to why you will succeed or fail is your ability to execute, is your ability to bring this to a sound close or a sound finish. It's your team's resilience and your team's ability to deliver. And you may say, yes, but you know, in a lot of industries, people launch and then people compete with them and then they aren't able to stay in the market anymore. In economics, we call this perfect competition. When a lot of people come into the market, that your profits diminish and then it just doesn't make sense for you to be in the market anymore. And perfect competition is something that applies to rice. It applies to maybe metals. It applies to cereals. It doesn't apply to an innovative idea. If your idea is innovative enough and you're executing it in a unique way, only you can do that. If you're worried about competition sweeping in, you need to make it a little bit more unique and a little bit more revolutionary. What is your ask? How much do you actually need? And why? Tell the investor what you're going to use the money for. Is it for operations? Is it for R&D? Is it for product development? Operations includes your salary, so don't say I'm going to take this amount of money to pay my salary. It can be off-putting. Do you need to hire new people? Does that fall into marketing? Does it fall into business development? Does it fall into product development? Give them 3 broad categories that you're going to spend that money that you're raising for. Show them what the vision of the world is with their investment. Where is it going to get you? You're at point A today. What is point B after they've invested? Don't be afraid about asking for what you need to raise. Be clear. An investor may be a part of your round. So if you're raising, let's say, 500,000, an investor may be able to commit 100,000. Then you need to find other investors to cover the rest. If you don't ask, you don't get. Golden rules for pitching. So now we know what you include in your pitch. How do you pitch it? Your tone is very important. Your body language is very important. And the words that you say are very important. Make sure you're projecting confidence. Act like you're talking to 3 rows in front of you. 3 or 4. You're not talking to the first row. You're not screaming and talking to the last one. Usually when you're nervous, you talk very quickly. So make sure you slow down. Even if you're going a bit slower than average, you'll end up speaking normally. Have a conversation with your audience. Ask them questions. Your body language helps build credibility. It exudes confidence, helps you express your emotions, helps you connect with your audience. Don't overdo it. Something that people do as well is they hear body language and then they talk like this. But it's important for you to make sure that your gestures and your hand movements are helping you, not detracting from you. It helps the audience focus. It helps give them visual cues in addition to what you're saying. Your facial expressions are very important as well. Make sure that you're smiling, make sure that you're animated, make sure that you're gesturing to indicate a transition, and make sure that you're standing confidently. This is what a confident stance looks like on the left of your screen. Have a wide stance. If you have your arms above your head, for example, you're talking about something grand. The second, or the right side, is a not so confident. It's just slouching, hunching, sitting with your hands folded in your lap, arms crossed in front of you. Just make sure that you don't do that. Pro tips: master your transitions. The worst thing you can do when you're pitching is say title, problem, solution. I don't want to know the titles of your slides. Tell me a story. Let me understand that you're talking about the problem without having to say problem before you talk about it. Keep it relevant. Make sure that whatever you're saying is relevant to your audience and know your benchmarks. If you're going to throw in numbers and statistics, make sure that they're good, relevant to your business. If you're making a profit of, let's say, 5% and the industry average is 20%, that's not good. Understand what the industry standard is. Don't do an overkill with detail. Make sure that people are getting just enough to capture their interest, and beware of whiplash. Not everybody's going to agree with you. You're going to get a lot of feedback, whether you solicit the feedback or not. Be open to it. Be humble. And make sure that you're implementing the feedback. Don't have unrealistic forecasts. Like I said, if you're addressing a market that's large enough, 1 to 2% of your market is good. It's a realistic forecast. If you're expecting to capture 50% of a certain market, think again. Nobody's going to believe that. I'm not saying that you won't. I'm just saying that when you're starting off, you need to have a business idea that is feasible, even given 1 to 2% of the market. If you don't know all the answers, be honest. Tell them we'll get back to them later. Don't give them any empty promises. Use visual support and practice, practice, practice. The most important thing to get your pitch right is to practice it. Memorize it. Don't look at your slides. Knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do. I love this comic. Don't add too many slides and don't design them badly. Use nice colors, nice fonts, not too nice that they don't look professional. Be prepared and have basic presentation skills. And not everybody is, I would say, the same in terms of their presentation skills. So if you have a team of people that are presenting, pick your best presenters, especially if you're presenting to investors. Everybody needs to practice. Everybody needs to prepare. But when there are stakes, when something's on the line, make sure you're putting your best presenter forward. Keep it interesting. Like we said, instead of putting a table, you could use different bubbles. Higher amount gets a higher bubble or a bigger bubble.